to install the LUNA2000 battery together with the Huawei LUNA2000 KDL1 single-phase photovoltaic inverter. You will also see the installation of this electrical box. The backup box, which is an electrical box, as I said, inside has some contactors. And they are going to serve us when we have a power outage to be able to continue working with photovoltaic and with the energy we have in the battery. So in the event of a power outage, we could continue to operate both with the photovoltaic and with the energy we have in the battery LUNA2000. Here you are seeing an electrical diagram of the components that we are going to need for this installation. On the one hand, we are going to need an energy meter or bat meter. This type of meters are necessary for this type of hybrid inverters so that at all times have the reading of the energy we import or export, in such a way that when we have excess photovoltaic energy, the energy meter will tell the photovoltaic inverter, and we can store in the battery those photovoltaic surpluses. So apart from this energy meter, we will also need the PV inverter, the battery, and this contactor box that will serve us to put us in island mode in case of a power outage and feed a special output to special loads, and feed a special output to critical loads that will allow us to use electrical appliances or some kind of load that we believe appropriate. In the event of a power outage, to have that type of power supply and that exclusive output to critical loads. We are going to begin with the installation of the battery. As you see, it is a modular battery that composes of a base on which we are going to be adding the different modules. In this case, we are going to add a 5 kilowatt-hour module. In this module is where the lithium cells go, as I said, 5 kilowatt-hours, although we could add 2 more modules. Although we could add 2 more modules to form 10 or 15 kilowatt-hours with 3 modules. In the upper part, we have to add the power module, which has the built-in BMS, although it should be noted that each battery module of 5 kilowatt-hours has its own manager, its own optimizer, so that if we want to expand the power module, we have to add the power module. So that if we want to expand the installation in the future, the different modules that we have are not unbalanced. So the first step would be to stack the different modules, then we are going to place these lateral supports so that the modules do not move. It is also recommended to fix the battery to the wall, then we would connect the grounding cables. Connect the power bridges between the different positive and negative modules, the communication cables between the different modules, and then we would have to prepare the power cable between the modules. Then we would have to prepare the positive and negative power cable that goes to the photovoltaic inverter. As you can see now on the screen, the positive cable is made up at the ends of the positive and negative modules. Positive cable is composed at the ends of 2 male connectors MAC4 male format. And then, well, in the negative cable we would have 2 connectors MAC4 female format. Then we would connect the communication between the battery and the photovoltaic inverter. Here in screen you are seeing the pins. The corresponding pins both in the part of the battery and in the part of the photovoltaic inverter. And now we would only have to place the caps, that apart from being decorative because they have the function of being able to protect the wiring of the battery. Well, here you can see in more detail the installation we have on the one hand, the energy meter in this part. In the inferior part you see that they take the cables of communication towards the photovoltaic inverter and the cables that go towards the toroidal sensor. Here located in the phase cable coming from the power supply, the arrow as you can see points towards the house, towards the consumption, and then at the top we have connected phase and neutral, the power supply, and down the communications. Then over here we have the contactor box. Here you can see that the wires that we are going to connect would be phase, neutral and ground that comes from the power company, then the inverter output. Phase, neutral and grounding and the output to critical loads, the output that we want to continue working in case of a power failure, phase, neutral, grounding and the output to critical loads, the output that we want to continue working in case of a power failure, phase, neutral, grounding, and then here we have the communication cables with the photovoltaic inverter. Here you can see with more detail the connections of the photovoltaic inverter. We have the positive and negative towards the first series of panels, positive and negative towards the second series of photovoltaic panels. We have the positive and negative towards the battery. The communications cables, both the one that goes to the battery, the one that goes to the energy meter, as well as the one that goes to the contactor box. Here we have the connections of alternating current and the cable of putting to earth that goes towards the chassis of the photovoltaic inverter. Once we have everything connected, we are going to start with the commissioning. The first thing we are going to do is to turn on the battery. we have to activate the battery disconnect switch. We're going to activate also the start button of the battery that is on the other side. We have to maintain for 5 seconds, press this button. We're going to activate now the photovoltaic inverter from the part of direct current. We are going to raise the protections that we have of direct current as well as the disconnector, the DC switch. Now to continue with the commissioning, we are going to do it from the Solar Fusion application. I will leave in the description of the video the download links of the application, and once you open the application you can see that, well, we have two options to perform this commissioning. We can do it without internet connection or with internet connection. In the case that we do not have internet connection, we would have to click here at the top. We would get a screen like this, and here we would have to click on commissioning, and we would follow the same steps as in the mode with internet connection. In this case, we're going to do it with connection to internet, since it is very advisable, due to the fact that it is going to be necessary to. We're going to have to make an update of the battery and the photovoltaic inverter. So, well, we're going to register. If you do not have an account, you will have to register. In this case, you have to select that you are installers. Then we would have to enter all our data, including a verification code that we will receive by email. We register, and we could already enter the Solar Fusion application, both with our username or email, as well as the password. We enter, and well, we have to go to the section of me and commissioning the device. Now we have to click on this icon to scan the QR code that is on the side of the inverter, and thus we will connect directly from the cell phone to the photovoltaic inverter through the Wi-Fi network that generates the photovoltaic inverter once we are connected locally. Will possibly ask us to change the password that comes by default. In some cases we must enter this password, but it is usually change the password that comes by default. We continue, and in this screen we already begin with the process of starting up. Here we have to select the network code for the corresponding country. In this case for Spain it is RD1699. We continue. Here you can see that the devices we have in the installation are already being detected, both the energy meter and the battery. We continue. Then we have to select the operating mode of the hybrid inverter together with the battery. In this case, the maximum self-consumption mode would be the most recommendable. Is the hybrid operation mode, in which the loads that are connected are going to be fed first from the photovoltaic when it is not the hybrid mode. From the photovoltaic, when it is not enough, they will also take energy from the battery. When we have photovoltaic surpluses, these surpluses will be charged in the battery. So that would be the most recommended mode of operation. We also have a mode of operation in which we can inject energy that is in the battery. Energy that is in the battery can be injected into the grid, so it is a mode of operation that is not usually used. And we would have a third mode of operation, that is scheduling the charging of the battery by time slots. This could be useful if we want to make use of the economic tariffs during the night, for example, to charge the battery. So we select the maximum self-consumption mode, which would be the most common mode, and continue. Here you can see that all the devices of the installation are being detected, and we can click on finish. Now you can see that we are going to appear some alarms, surely, because it is telling us that we have to is indicating us that we have to perform an update of both the battery and the PV inverter. Click on maintenance, click on device management, and it will begin to update possibly the inverter and the battery. Anyway, it is advisable to check the updates are the latest. For this we have to go to maintenance. We have to go to update device and check and update all the devices that we have in the installation. We would only have to configure the island mode, which would be the operating mode, in which, in case of a power outage, the PV inverter and the battery will continue to operate. So we have to go to settings, we have to go to function parameters, and here we have to select the island mode. We can also configure the maximum discharge of the battery. In this case, we're going to leave it up to 20% of margin. We always want to have a 20% of reserve in the battery. In case there is a case that we lose the connection with the network, also to extend the life of the battery. Here we have to leave the automatic switching so that when we lose the connection to the grid, we can switch to standalone mode. At this point we would already have the battery and the PV inverter in operation. I recommend that you check the updates of both the battery and the inverter. To me, it has given me some alert, and I have had to update again the photovoltaic inverter and the battery. So taking this into account, well, we would only be left to configure, if you do not have it already, the remote monitoring through internet, and for this you have to create a plant. You can do it here from the application itself. You have to go to the I section here, you have to click on plant management, and you have to enter all the data of the plant. The location, the name of the plant, etc. We would give the following one. It would ask us to associate the photovoltaic inverter, and we would already have the monitoring to be able to take control of the installation through internet, which in this case would be through this own application. This application of Solar Fusion serves us to be able to carry out the commissioning. You have already seen that it is possible also without internet connection. And then we can also use this same application to be able to monitor remotely. So well, these would be the steps to perform the commissioning of the moon battery along with the PV inverter. But well, it may be the case that you already have the photovoltaic inverter already installed. You already have the application in operation. Then in the case that already you only need to add the battery and the installation, I recommend you to follow the steps that we have done in this video of starting up. That would be to have everything disconnected. First we would turn on the moon battery, then we would turn on the inverter, and well, we would enter in the application, and we would come here to the section of quick settings. And we would start with the usual startup process, in which we have to select the network code, we have to select the operating mode on the next screen. In the next screen, the operating mode that we want for the battery and the hybrid inverter, and we would continue, the inverse is surely going to restart. And we would only have to check that we have all the updates and the part of configuration in island mode.